Hello, everyone. We welcome you all to Future You, Set Your Career Compass Right with Experts Insight. And I am Kalyani Majumdar, your host for today's webinar. We are now continuing with our careers in consulting in this episode as well. Last episode, we covered management consulting, and this episode, we will be covering IT consulting. And we'll be covering questions such as how to become an IT and strategy consultant, what are the opportunities available, skill sets required to excel, tips on profile building, what is the career progression from entry level to senior position, what are the typical entry points into consulting, and many more such questions. So we have our speaker today, Prateek Tak. He's a business consultant, IT and strategy with Infosys Consulting. He has completed his MBA from IIFT and has diverse experience in fields such as consulting, banking, and digital marketing. So while interning at Google, he developed his skills in problem solving and offering solutions to clients, which in turn paved the way for his career in consulting. So today we have Prateek Tak. He'll be answering all those questions that we were talking about, that these are the topics that we are going to be covering today. And so welcome, Prateek Tak. Thank you so much for taking our time and coming for Future You episode. So let's start with your career progression.
Hi. Thanks, Kalyani. It's great to be here. So let's get to the point. So as you've already introduced, my name is Prateek Tak. So I am an MBA graduate from Indian Institute of Foreign Trade. Prior to my IIFT, I'm an engineer. So I've done my BTech in Electronics and Communication Engineering. I did it from Swami Vivekananda College in Chandigarh. Post that, I worked in a startup called Voice Tree Technologies. So I was into digital marketing. I used to do content strategizing and write blogs for them, maintain their social media pages. But then when I was there, I wrote this exam called the SBI PO, or probationary officer. I wanted to explore more how the government organizations function, how the banks work. So I interned, joined SBI as an organization. So I was working with Voice Tree in Delhi, and then probably with SBI, I moved to a very rustic little place in Gujarat, in Surendranagar. So it was a huge transition from a city life to a little village life. With SBI and government organizations, you get to experience a lot of different experience than corporates, because you get into the real grassroots level. You look at people, you shell out loans to them. But then after a point in time, I realized it was a little mundane sort of a job. I wanted something more, exhilarating, something more exciting. The whole rigmarole of a 10 to 5 job was taking toll on me. And the only exit options for me was to take CAT and write an MBA exam. So I took CAT, I took other exams like IIFT, I took MICA tests. And I cleared a couple of them and then eventually joined IIFT.
Okay. So can you also talk about, like, while we were discussing all the questions and all, you were talking about how Google played an important role in paving the way for a career in consulting for you. Can you also speak about that and also like elucidate on that, and not just that, also talk about a little bit about how the right kind of internship can really change your career plans completely?
Yeah. So, when you enter a B school, you honestly do not know what to expect, because there are people from different backgrounds. You come from a different, business function altogether. So most of my colleagues and my, fellow batchmates, they were coming from corporates. So they were either into IT or they were into, retail. But then these are all corporate and, multinational companies. I, on the other hand, was coming from a public sector bank, all right? So my experience was totally different from them. So when I got into Google as part of my summer internship program, so it was my first stint at a corporate job, all right?
Right.
I had customers before joining Google, right? There were people who they were village people who wanted loans. So they were customers, they were not clients. So when I interned with Google, I got to know, how a corporate functions, what are clients, what is actually on ground business problem solving, what are deadlines. So all these different aspects of corporate life, all these idiosyncrasies, I got to know only when I interned with Google, all right? And honestly, that is where all things getting started falling into place. My consulting career, I totally owe it to an internship like Google, okay? And for a B school graduate, summer internship is something which is your, the first thing that you do it, because when you enter a B school after 2 or 3 months, you get into an organization. I mean, you get sit for summer placements, and then you eventually go on to intern into one of these organizations. So it's really very important where you intern, what kind of organization it is, what kind of projects you do there. And most often than not, it really happens that the functions you intern in, you either get a PPO or a PPI, you convert the organization, or you set path for what you want to do in the future.
Okay. So can you now talk a little bit more about what are the functions of an IT consultant? What are the job duties? You can also talk about IT and strategy with a higher focus on your role at Infosys Consulting.
All right. So before delving into IT consulting, let me just explain what consulting is. I know you've already had a session, but then just to generalize, so consulting as a job duty or as a business function is basically problem solving.
Mm-hmm.
So as a consultant, you're supposed to be giving more thought to a client's problem. All right. It can be in a management consulting domain. It could be an IT consulting domain, but it's basically problem solving. Now, when I say that it's problem solving, you'll come back and ask, why can't a client do it on their own? All right. Why do you need consultants for that? The basic answer to that is, like, every organization will definitely have an internal team. All right. Internal consultants that will do it for them. But we as external consultants, we bring in diverse experiences, all right? We study the industry, we work with different organizations, we know the best practices that are there, all right? So that is where we pitch in, and we bring a lot to the table that ways, right? We honestly, have a different kind of a lens from where we see the problem, and that really helps the clients. Now, as a graduate, all right, as an MBA graduate, you will always be a business consultant. Although you're working in a management function or an IT function, you will always be a business consultant. All right. So if at all you are interested in coding or not, you are not supposed to code basically. But then if you have an interest area, you can always go ahead and pursue it. But you will always be a conduit between the development team and the clients. All right. You're a face to the client. So even if it's a management function role or an IT consulting role, you will definitely be a face to the client. So that is one. The second thing, as far as the job duties are concerned, it's a sort of a very, very hectic life, I would say. Although it's very exciting, I would say you come up with real life problems. You have to solve real life problems. You'll put in solutions, and it's very exciting, but then it takes a toll on you because you have to travel very constantly. And this is obviously the pre-COVID era we are talking about. So I've literally lived out of suitcases for months. All right. So that is one part of the life. The second thing, I think, as an IT consultant, you will not delve deep into technology. I think that is one aspect all the listeners should consider and know, that you're not supposed to be knowing the technology in and out. You as a consultant have to solve the problem. All right. So you say, this is the problem. This is a solution that I'm offering. Now you get in touch with the IT team, the development team, the tech architects, and you sit down with them, and then you explain the problem that the client has, and then they'll come up with a solution, right? The tech solution part of it. So you as a consultant, as an IT or strategy consultant, will just solve the problem.
Right. Yeah. So can you, so there is a question, someone is asking about, can you take one example for real world problem and how you solved it? So it's kind of like, can you also take my question on, talk about some, or maybe one or two challenges that you faced in the company as as a consultant, and how did you overcome it, or what was the solution? How did you solve it?
All right. So there are two parts to it. So let me just take a real life example first, and then I'll talk about the challenges. So in most of the projects that we have, for example, if I have to take one, the client will come up with a business problem saying that I have to launch an app. All right. So there are two parts to it. How do I launch it, and where do I launch it? All right. So I'm talking about the India market, say, for example. Okay. So the first part, where you say, how do I launch an app, or what will the app contain? That is basically the IT part of it. The second part, where I say, where do we launch it, is the management part or the strategy part of it. Okay. So as a consultant, you'll cater to both. Okay. I'll come to them one by one individually. Let me take the second part first, because that is where it starts. So the client, you have to consider the client's problem, saying that, where do we enter, which cities in India would we want to enter? So you look at, market sizing sort of things. You look at the demographics, you look at the digital footprint of that city. And that is where and how you'll decide these are the cities you want to penetrate in a particular market.
Right.
Now comes the first part of the question, where you say, how do we develop an app, and what are the features that is going to be there? This is primarily the IT part of it. So you will take the business, requirements from the clients. You'll understand what they are looking for in the app. All right. And that is where you'll focus all your energies. You'll see that these are the different functions the app should have. All right. You're still looking at the basics, how the app will function, what vendors or what partners will it have, how will the UI look like, and you take these requirements, and then you go to the development team. You sit with the tech architects, you sit with the developers, and say that, boss, this is what the client requires. Now tell me, how do we build it? All right. That is when it gets a little more technical, but then you just have to stay on top of it. You need not delve deep into it, into the technology they'll use, what sort of coding will it take, but you will only look at the basic nuances as to how the app should look, what will be the consumer journey, okay, what pages will be there, what sort of integration will happen, what are the different vendors that will onboard on the app, how many steps are there in the app, does it look good, does it have a good appearance, okay, how are the number of steps. So all these things is what you look at. The rest is taken care by the development team. All right. So this is a typical example of IT and strategy consulting project. Now I'll talk more about the challenges. So honestly, every day is a new challenge in consulting. But the most regular ones is the ones that we get is so you have to understand that as an external consultant, you are actually talking with the internal stakeholders of the client's company. All right. So you're basically telling them that this solution is better than what currently is in place. All right. And that is where there's a little backlash. All right. So you have to be very, very convincing in your approach. You have to back it with data. You have to have the numbers behind it, and you should convince the internal stakeholders that, boss, this is something which is better than what is currently existing. Okay. And there are people, and these are people who have been with the company for 5, 7, 10 years. All right. And you as an external stakeholder come and you want to change the whole approach of it. So that is, I think, one of the most challenging problems that we generally face.
Okay. This is a question that almost everybody asks to a consultant. Is consulting a job for travel-loving people? Well, right now, that's a very apt question because nobody is traveling anywhere. Yeah, I mean, I think everybody wants to travel right now. So I'm guessing right now everybody is a travel-loving person who's unable to travel. Yeah,
You
can you answer this as well?
No, honestly, it is a travel. It's a hefty travel job. I'll say, but then I'm not sure as to how much of the world will you be able to see when you travel, because these are business travels, right? So that is something which you have to keep in mind. So you wake up early in the morning, grab a cup of coffee, and you're off to the airport. All right, Monday mornings are like that, and then you directly hit the client's office. That's Monday morning. You work throughout the week. I don't know really if you will really be able to get out of your hotel or the client location, because it's a consuming job, right? And then you get a Thursday or a Friday fly back to the city, all right? So it's good. It's very ambiguous. Obviously, you will have to consider the element of travel, because if you really don't like to travel, then I don't think this is a job for you. All right. So you have to be mentally prepared and geared up that you will be working out of the airports, you'll be working out of cabs. I have actually, made presentations on airplanes and then presented it to clients of, the lounges in the airport. So it's that sort of a job. So you have to be comfortable with travel and working together. But then, yes, this is pre-COVID era. All right. Currently, everybody is working from home. So
There's a question. I have been working as a data scientist trainee for the past 13 months with a firm in Mumbai. Post an MBA, where would I fit in? Management consulting or IT consulting?
Uh, it depends on where your preferences lie. Okay. I think data is the new oil, right? That's what they say. So you're into a good stream, I would say, because both the functions, management consulting, even IT and strategy consulting, they will require a lot of data mining, deriving insights out of data. So it's a good track you are on. But then there's a very slight difference in both IT and management consulting. Although the basic, the basic skill set will still remain the same. It depends on which way you are tilting. I mean, do you really like IT as as a business function? Are you really passionate about IT? Or you just want to, you don't want to get into implementations. You just want to solve just the business problems, and then you let the IT consultants take the implementation role. So it depends on what you want to do, but you will have to do the basic brush up of the basic skill sets.
Mm-hmm. So there's another question as well along the same similar lines. How BBA plus MBA student can go to IT field, although we don't actually need to learn coding, but we need some knowledge of IT field, which we don't have. So how and which kind of functions we do there? So yeah, as in if they're not learning anything, as in coding or anything, then if they get into IT field as a consultant, how much and which kind of functions are they going to be doing there? So basically, you can also take this question with one question that I wanted to ask you as well, as in how much of an IT background do you need to have to become an IT consultant?
All right. Yeah. So if you consider my career trajectory, I am not from an IT background. All right. So when you talk of consulting, there are two main things. So one is the domain part, all right, the business function, and then there are the skill sets part of it. Okay. It's a basic skill set you require to be a consultant. We'll talk about it in more detail later. Let me take this question of not being from an IT background. So honestly, it doesn't matter much, because in my team I have people from varied backgrounds. I have CAs, I have BCom honors people, I have philosophy majors as well. So I come from a banking background. So it's not a prerequisite, but you should be a little, you should be excited about the IT part of it. Okay, I mean, you should understand just enough to be able to pull it off. That is what I'll say. So when you go through a B school course, there are a lot of courses, there are a lot of electives that will help you understand these basic nuances. Otherwise, if you're good on the domain part, so be it financial services, be it retail, manufacturing, so these are the domain parts. If you're good, if your subject matter expertise is good and you understand a little bit of IT, I'm not saying you should have an IT experience or should know coding, but you should understand how IT works. All right. You should be aware of the jargons. You should understand what an API is. Okay. it could be that you've not even come across it, but then you should have read about it a little. You should be excited about it. That is what they look for. And the rest, I think, if you're good on the domain part, you will make it through, because initially there are a lot of trainings that you undergo, and when you have a couple of projects, I think you will become comfortable. So it's not a prerequisite, I would say.
Okay. Okay. So how the work experience? What kind of work experience do you need before B school, so that you can land a job as a consultant? So basically, work experience before getting into B school.
So it doesn't really matter, because consulting as a field caters to, all kind of business functions. So be it an IT work experience, be it be it banking work experience, be even for that matter, retail, manufacturing. So as a consulting as a career caters to all different industries, all different functions. All right. So it really doesn't matter which industry you come from, because you'll be because there are different verticals which these consulting firms have. Okay, so based on the kind of experience you have had or your inclination towards one industry vertical, you'll be placed accordingly. All right, but then whatever you do before joining a B school, I think you should. So no matter what kind of projects you do, you should be thorough with it. I think that is what the companies are more interested in. So whatever work you have done in the past, it should just not be just another thing. You should really be doing it with all your heart. All right. You should know what you have done in the past, so as to justify, the work done by you. So it doesn't really matter what kind of work experience you come in.
So is coding very important? Do you need to do coding and all that? No, not at all.
Not really. I have a lot of friends who really like to code. They have been computer engineers and they come from an IT background. So they really like to code. Okay. So it's an option. The more you want to get in the depth of it, it's a personal choice. For me, I really don't like coding that much. I understand a little bit of it, but then I really don't delve into coding. So it's a personal choice. And honestly, you don't need to know a lot of coding to get into consulting.
Okay. How much relevance does a 2.5 years of experience in business intelligence and data analytics would play in the final placements to become an IT consultant? So it's a placement question.
It varies from B school to B school, honestly, the level of experience and the kind of work you do. But then I think business intelligence and analytics is the buzzword now. Everybody is looking to hire people from analytics because of, there's a lot of buzz around machine learning, artificial intelligence. So these are all very relevant to what the person is doing. So I think it's a good mix. 2.5 years of work experience is also, I think, good. But it depends what kind of a campus you get into and what kind of consulting companies visit that campus. So that becomes a big question there. So if there are all the MBBs and all the consulting firms are visiting, I think you have a really good profile.
Right. There is a question from your Google. How were you offered an internship at Google? Was it through a contact or was it through IIFT's internship cell? What was the type of role or project did you work on? Did Google offer a permanent role during the completion of the internship? How important is, there are many questions on this. How important is a programming background in order to work at Google?
Okay, a lot of questions.
Maybe, take maybe of course, we already covered the fact that, yes, it was an internship with IIFT. It was part of that, he interned with Google. And yes, you can probably take, what was the type of role or project you work on?
Okay, so let me just, so because these are all B school aspirants, let me just clear the air around the internship bit. So as I was saying, summer internship is something, the first thing that you look for when you enter into a B school, all right? Because it's just 2 to 3 months away. So all the placement cells, all the committees, all the preparation cells, these will gear you up for these sitting in these summer internships. Okay, and this is actually the first big thing that you'll do in a B school. All right, so that is where it becomes really, really important what kind of internship you get. In most of these B schools, Google does visit, and they will have a normal process like all the other companies. You'll sit for 3 or 4 different rounds of interviews before you get selected. I didn't have an IT background, as I said. So there were around 50 or 40 or 50 shortlists for Google. But then, and most of the people that were there, they had an IT background. Okay, I think I had the most diverse profile. And I was coming from a banking background, and Google is one firm that looks for diversity. All right. So they would get all these IT people, they'll get all these profiles across different B schools, but then they look for diversity. All right. And that is why I made it. All right. Probably one of the reasons, because of my diverse background, I made it among approximately 250 people. I was the only one there. All right. So that's one part of it. The second is the different. So as a firm which is hiring summer interns, they will already have a fixed project in mind. Okay, so every which firm that hires from a B school, they will identify certain areas which the interns will. So I was given a project on I was to automate the process of efficiency estimation inside Google. So they had a manual process for a certain vertical. All right, I was supposed to automate it. I will not get into details because it's a little technical, but then it did not require coding, because generally when Google hires from B schools, it's not for the coding roles, but it is for the management functions. So that you will not require a very specific coding skills in that. Okay, it's just problem solving skills, business management skills, and then how you go about with the project. Okay, that is another part of it. The third part is Google does offer PPIs. So PPI is a pre-placement interview. So when I interned, I had around 17 different interns across India who were interning with me. They shelled out PPI to 4 people. I was amongst the 4 people who got a PPI, because Google does not offer a PPO directly. Most of the other firms, what they'll do is, if you do a good internship, they will directly offer you a job. So that's a pre-placement offer. But Google only offers a pre-placement interview. So all of the 4 of us, we had to go through another 4 or 5 rounds of interviews in order to convert that offer. But unfortunately, none of us that year got a PPO eventually. So we were again made to sit in the final placements. So that is how generally it happens when Google offers, visits campuses. This is the general process that happens.
Okay. How is you can take this question with one more. How is the work-life balance in the field of consulting, and also how do you decide that? How do you know that you were cut out for this particular career choice? How do you know that you can be a good consultant? What are the kind of hard skills, soft skills that you need to be really good at IT and strategy consultant?
Okay, so it's obviously it's not a mundane job. It's not a 10 to 5 job, I would say. It is a bit on the higher side. You will come up with a lot of ambiguity and challenges every particular day. Right? It's not a very orthodox kind of a job where you know what you have to do every day, because each day the client will come up with a different requirement and you will have to think on your feet. All right. So the work-life balance, it varies from firm to firm. All right. But then it's honestly, it's not a 10 to 5 job. All right. So you will have to put in a little extra effort, because the requirements keep on changing. The problem keeps on evolving. And it's a demanding job. All right. So you have to have a consulting mindset to cater to it. You should be up for travel. I have had, travel requests coming in like today, and I have to travel in the night. All right. So you have to be that prepared to travel and to visit the client location, to look at what each day has to offer. All right. So that way you have to be really, really prepared. That is one. The second thing is, you would not really know if you're made for consulting or not. All right. However, let me take this question on what are the skill sets required for being a consultant. I'll combine these two for the answer. So I think first and foremost, the main thing is the communication part of it. All right. Communication skills is one thing that every consulting firm will look at. Okay. Even before you interview for the, the particular vertical or a domain, there will be an interview that will focus only and only on your communication skills. Okay. Because you have to remember that you are the face to the client. Okay. You are representing the company to the client. Okay. So you have to be very, very, immaculate with how you set out the conversations with the client. So that is one. Okay. Second is your comfort level with numbers. So no matter what type of consulting you're doing, IT, strategy, management, any which consulting, you have to be comfortable with numbers. Okay. You have to know what numbers imply. All right. You have to get insights out of these numbers. So when you read the pink papers, there will be a lot of data they throw in. Okay. So you have to understand. So when a newspaper says that the company's profit is, quarter on quarter, it's increasing 5%, or they give numbers, you should understand what this data is implying. What's the hidden meaning behind this data? All right. So that is where your comfort with numbers will come in. And that is why, you have these difficult quantitative papers in all these MBA entrances. Right. That is basically to check how comfortable you are with numbers. And you have to actually think on the go, because the client will directly throw numbers at you. So you have to make out what these numbers mean on the go. All right. You will not have to sit with a calculator and then calculate it and give it to them the next day. It's part of the conversation. Okay. So that is the second part of it. I think the third is your mindset and the problem solving skills. And in order to acquire that, it comes from all day-to-day activities that you do. No matter if you're a student, you're still studying in a school, or you're working on a project, or no matter what you do, even if you're playing a sport, all right, that problem solving instinct has to be there. You have to be better at, solving the day-to-day problems, and that is how you will excel at your work as well. So I think these are the three major skill sets that any consulting organization will look at. So if you're good at it, obviously I think you should have a go at consulting.
Okay. There's a question. I've been working as a consultant in data and analytics with PwC for over 2 years. Mm-hmm. And I wish to switch to a more business-centric role now. Mm-hmm. For example, business analyst, where my responsibility is more into the functional and business side rather than technical. Mm-hmm. What steps or measures shall I take in order to achieve this?
Correct. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think one would be to get into a B school, a good B school, and then directly, because most of the roles that come into a B school would be more functional and business oriented. As you said, currently, even if you're working with PwC, it will be more technical. If you want to switch directly from if you don't want to go the B school route, or you want to still switch, I would say get into a more managerial sort of a role. Ask your manager or your boss to give you more responsibility in terms of managing team, talking to cross-functional teams and leading projects. That is another thing that you can do. But then the straight route forward is go to a good B school, take some of the good business electives, consulting electives, get into the strategy club if there is at that particular B school, and then that's the easiest path to go.
Okay. How to build your profile to excel in this field? Can you talk about like few tips on how the way you spoke about like the kind of skills, aptitude you need, soft skills you need, something like that. Like, but in tips maybe how to build their profile to excel in this field.
Okay. All right. So I'll talk about it both from a perspective of a student and a working professional. So if you're a student, I think academics is something which every consulting firm is concerned about, because if you're good at academics, it shows consistency and excellence, all right? If you don't have a work ex, how will a firm judge you, right? How will they get to know that you've done something like, because for work experience people, they have their work to showcase it for them, all right? For a student, academics is, I think, the only judge where they'll get to know that you have pursued something. Apart from academics, you can also delve deep into your hobbies, all right? Because no matter what you do, if you're good at sports, if you're good at dancing, you play a guitar, at least pursue it to a level that you have something to showcase. All right. That shows that you never give up.
Right.
Right. If you pursue or like something, you go ahead and chase it. Okay. We really appreciate. Also, apart from this, I'm still talking about the student perspective. There are a lot of business case competitions that now many of the organizations hold. They have competitions that they float out to all these graduate schools. So if you get into those, you participate and win some of them, it really helps you to get into the shoes of the consultant, because most of these competitions are around real life. So if you have a little exposure around these, from this, look for something that gives you an edge. So for example, I'll tell you something from my experience. So while I was working with the State Bank of India, I was posted in a remote area. So somehow I felt internally that my public speaking skills were taking a hit, because I was not talking to clients, I was not talking to a lot of I was getting into local and these languages. So what I decided is I joined something called the Toastmasters Club. I'm not sure if you've heard of it. So it's a public speaking platform. All right. That would really helps build your leadership skills and your public speaking skills. So I used to take out time on weekends and go and take, speak in these public forums just to, improve my public speaking skills, because that's really, really important. And that is one of the skills that you should look for. And they have, and it's an international organization that gives you, certificates as well for speaking in the public platform. So do something which stands out, something which attracts attention on your CV, because that is something that really helps. If you're a working professional, I think your work is something which everyone will be interested in. So take up more and more leadership roles, take initiatives while you are at work. Okay. Apart from the, projects that you are doing, you are getting involved, take a lot more initiatives and do different sort of a projects. If even if you're getting similar kind of projects, request your boss to switch your role to something more managerial, something which directly impacts business rather than being at the back end. All right, you can, if you're hungry enough, if you want to do something, I think nobody can stop you. All right, if you're persistent, you will eventually get those kind of projects, get those roles, get client appreciations while at work. Okay. Try and do your work so that the client will appreciate it through a mail or give you a certificate. Those are some things which will really stand out. Okay. And apart from that, I said, if you have a hobby, if you write a blog, if you are into music, do some certifications around it, pursue it with whole of your heart. So these things will really stand out on your CV, and the recruiter will really take note of it, because it's not only about academics nowadays, right? You have to excel in different fields. That shows consistency. So that is, I think, what you can do.
So can you also give maybe just give 3 tips, as in very, very briefly, as in what are the few things that our MBA, since our target audience attendees are mostly
MBA aspirants.
who are MBA aspirants. So what are the few things that our MBA aspirants can keep in mind to prepare themselves from now, as in now? Okay. Other than, of course, preparing for CAT.
Yeah. So CAT is one thing. So yes, obviously CAT scores is something which you'll have to take care of. One thing is, so in terms of tips, communication skills, I said, okay. So this will all help you get through CAT as well as through placement interviews. All right. Try and, speak learn more about communications. Join some of these public platforms that helps you evolve your public speaking skills. All right. If you are a student or you're at a job, take leadership positions at various committees that are there in the colleges or inside the organization you work for. This will really help you. Second thing, I would say, participate and take your hobbies very, very seriously. Okay. It shows something that you're not really into only one thing, but into multiple arenas. Okay. So pursue your hobbies, go for certain, certifications. If you write a blog, popularize it, digitize it over these social media platforms, right? Do it regularly. Okay. So if it's, I have seen a lot of people who write, but then it just fades away when you start working, all right? But if you maintain it for say a 6-7 years or 4-5 years, it shows consistency in what you do, all right? Apart from this, I think, and yeah, be comfortable with numbers. No matter what field you get into post your MBA, you will require numbers. Okay, so when you read the pink papers, when you read the different newspapers, just don't skip the numbers. Try, Google it, what it means, get it into the depth of it. Okay, try and understand what the writer or the author is trying to speak, because those numbers, most of us, skip those numbers when you're reading a business article. I think the more you research about it, more you understand what these mean, it really helps, and it will pave way for you.
Okay. Okay. So you've already spoken about how you can prepare yourself to become an IT and strategy consultant. But what is the career progression from entry level to senior positions? What are the steps? And
Okay,
what are the
so
and
it
also,
depends.
what are the typical entry points into consulting? IT and strategy, and of course,
Okay.
other consulting too.
Yeah. So yeah, every organization will have a different set of positions that are there. But generally speaking, even both for management consulting and even other, MBB and other IT and strategy roles, generally they will hire you from a B school at an associate consultant level. So that's the basic entry point. From an associate consultant, you will go on to become a senior associate or a senior consultant. Okay, it depends. So generally, people with a lot more work ex, even if they join at an associate consultant, they get quick promotions and they are elevated to a senior associate position. After a senior associate or a senior consultant, you come to a partner. You come to a principal role. So some organizations call it a manager. Some organizations call it principals. From there, you will eventually jump on to a senior principal. In some organizations, you directly skip all the senior principal and you directly go on to become a partner. But then if you have a middle position of a senior principal, you go there and then you eventually become a partner. And the progression again will depend from firm to firm, but it's generally 10 or 12 years where you take from a consultant to being a partner. All right. That's a general.
There's a question. I was working in construction industry since 4 years in designing, along with experience in planning and operations. Will it be relevant experience for me after I complete an MBA and then I would like to become a consultant or something? Will it be relevant?
Obviously, yeah. No, it's so. As I said, no experience that you have will become irrelevant. Okay, because as a consultant, all the consulting organizations will cater to all industry verticals, all right? Be it manufacturing, be it retail, be it banking, be it healthcare. So all of these organizations will, and they have been, requiring help from consulting agencies. So no matter what you have done, as long as you have done it with excellence, and as long as you have done it well, I don't think there's a particular experience that is above the other. All right. Again, it depends on what kind of companies visit the campus and what roles are they hiring for. That becomes a caveat. But then, as long as you have done well in the experience that you have, I think it's good to go.
Okay, for someone who's interested in working out of a different country, especially in the US, where the big four consulting firms are headquartered, how often do you see the consulting firm's Indian office granting employment-based immigration, and what roles are they inclined to do this for? Could you answer this, or?
I can answer it. So everybody knows the current scenario, right? So there've been a lot of sanctions put in by Mr. Trump in the US, all right? So there are difficulties now, if vis-a-vis 5 years before, all right? I have seen a lot of colleagues or different batchmates travel to the US earlier. A lot of seniors are based out of the US office. But then with a lot of these acts and sanctions that have been put to place, it is becoming a little difficult to work out of different, at least the US offices, all right? But there are other geographies. Europe is still open, the South America. It depends on what kind of roles and opportunities there are, all right? And these consulting firms, how much of a presence they have in that particular, the number of clientele they have in this particular geography. That really depends. Okay.
Can executive MBA help me in landing consulting roles, given I have an experience in IT?
Yeah, why not? But then it depends on what kind of an institution you are doing an executive MBA from. Okay, because not all consulting firms will take executive MBA graduates. But then if you have so executive MBAs generally is preferred by people who have a little higher work experience and they've already spent say 8 to 10 years already working and they don't want to go for a full-time 2 years MBA. All right. They generally opt for an executive MBA, but then there's no limitation to it. If you're doing it from, say, an ISB, right, which is a 1-year MBA course, or from, ABC or any other Excel. So there are firms which do recruit people with, 1-year executive MBA as well.
Do consulting firms consider taking students with no work experience, provided they have good academic and co-curricular?
Yes, they do. So I don't think there's any limitation on that because they also need, fresh minds working who can be molded into a particular industry vertical. With people with experience, what happens is you've already done something. So I come from a financial services background, so I'll be more catering towards, the banking and financial clients, and the company or the consulting firm also knows that this particular experience, this prior experience will help. With freshers or with people with no work experience, that is one good thing that they have because they have a fresh perspective towards everything. They can be molded into a particular industry.
Right.
But then for them, the cats have to be really, dashing. That is what firms will look for.
Right. What do you think? What is of course, we all know there has been impact of COVID-19 on everything, all the industries. So what kind of impact it has been on the consulting firms, and how are the professionals coping? And since our attendees are mostly going to be taking CAT this year and next year, so what do you think, what is the future of consulting as a career and also IT consulting as such in the next maybe 2-3 years or something like that? Present and yeah.
So I get a lot of questions around this. So
you can also talk about a bit about the past bit as well, because it was all rosy and nice till this thing happened.
Yeah. So this is something which I tell to everybody, and somebody has said that it's the same storm that we are all in, all right, but we all are in different boats. Okay, so I think most of the consulting firms are in one of those cozy boats, I would say. And that applies to my organization as well. All right. So as long as the business comes in, I think you are good to go. So consulting, if you talk about consulting as a career, right, it's problem solving. All right. So what happens is the problem statement keeps on changing. So even in this COVID scenario, the problem statement has changed. Okay. Now clients are talking about how do we work remotely? All right. How do we look at data security when people are working from home? All right. How do we cut IT costs, or how do we cut costs in general in this scenario? All right. So the problem are still persisting. They're still there, but the problem statement has changed. And I think that is where consulting as a career will never, it's always rosy, I would say. Okay. There would be a little minor hiccups, okay, because the budgets for the clients will shrink, but they will eventually need help. All right. And that is where we come in. And if you look at the past quarter results of most of these, big IT organizations, they're doing really, really well. All right. And I don't think that's going to change in the next 2 to 3 years as well. It's as the economy, progresses, it takes shape. I think this will get better. So for now, I think fingers crossed, nothing to worry.
Okay. So, if there's a question, any certification like Six Sigma or Kaizen, you would strongly recommend to enhance learning and strengthen my profile?
Yes, sure. Why not? So, honestly, there are these Six Sigma certifications that most of the B schools also offer as part of the curriculum. So, we had a Six Sigma certification. We had Kaizen certifications. It depends from field to field. So, these are operation related certifications, Six Sigma and all. So, there are CFA level ones, the CFA, there are FRMs for business and finance people, all right? So it's good to do them if you have time. It's always good to have them. And so when you enter a B school, you have that edge over the other candidates, because you'll not be able to do this before the summer placements. So if you have these in advance, this will help your summer placements definitely.
There's someone who's been asking this question for a long time, so I should take this. Please tell some points about digital marketing. Can you talk a little bit about your experience in digital marketing, since you had such a diverse work profile?
So if I'm not wrong, the question is around experience in digital marketing, right?
Yeah.
So
Yes. Just
I don't have a
briefly,
lot of work. Yeah, I
some
understand where
points.
the question is coming from. Yeah. So as far as digital marketing as a career is concerned, I think most of the startups now they offer a good roles in digital marketing. So if you're thinking of digital marketing as a career, I would say start with a role that gives you more responsibility, where you understand how the social media works, how SEO optimization works, okay, how blogging works, how do you manage the entire web page. So all these little things, if you delve deep into it, you understand all of it. I think it really helps. If you really want a career in digital marketing, I think something like a MICA, which has specializes courses in digital marketing, will really help you excel in your career. All right.
How can okay, somebody has asked this question. Your research for, okay, this person has been doing, has an experience in research for 23 months.
Mm-hmm.
Will that help me in campus recruitment? Also, how can I shift into IT consulting after MBA? So yeah, so this was actually something that even I wanted to ask you, as in like as in what is a transition? What is the path of transition? How do you go from one to the other if
All
you
right.
have been doing something else altogether?
Mm-hmm. So, so if you are into research, what was the job profile? Research, just
It's
research,
just
right?
research, yeah.
Just research. All right. So I think that also fits into consulting, because so for example, one of the projects that I had, we had to do, so research is a basic integral part of consulting, okay, both primary and secondary, because some of the projects or some of the problem statements are for market entry into a particular
Yeah,
geography.
front end development and UX research.
UX research. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is a different kind of research. I envision something like proper reporting and researching kind of role. But then any research you take, all right, as a consultant, you are supposed to be doing it. Okay. Either there are internal teams which will help you do this research, or you do it on your own based on the kind of project that are there. So again, it doesn't really matter what you have done, as I said earlier. The transition is more around the skill sets, the consulting mindset that you have. That is, I think, more heavy in terms of people with WorkX, all right? Because the consultants will be hired from different industry verticals, diverse backgrounds. It's just that whatever you have done in life, you should be good at it. You should have excelled. The transition will, the skill sets that we talked about, right? Communication skills, the numbers, being comfortable with numbers, being confident, being assertive with the clients. All these things will help you, transition smoothly from whatever you have done in your past. All right. Even if you've been a research consultant, even if you worked in manufacturing, in retail, in banking, that is your subject matter expertise that you always carry around. But these consulting skill sets will help you, transition smoothly into
Right.
consulting.
Okay. So someone is asking this question, quite a few times has asked this question. How does a failed startup look? I mean, how is it looked at these schools and consulting firms? How people usually take someone, who already has an experience in a failed startup? Does it help or does it?
So no, so honestly, it's not to be considered as a failure, all right? Any failure is a learning, all right? And that is what you have to keep in mind. So when you sit for interviews, any which interview you are, you do not portray the failure part of it, but you portray the learning part of it. Okay. So there are people who don't even know how a startup works. Okay. So when you have failed at a startup, you at least know how it functions and where the mistakes have been committed. All right. So I recall in one of my consulting interviews, I was asked that why I didn't convert Google. All right. So that was one of the questions. And because my CV mentioned that I had a PPI from Google in achievements. So I went ahead and said that, out of the 250 people from the batch, I was the only one that got into Google, all right. Out of the 17 interns, I was the only 4 people got a PPI. So therefore, I consider it as an achievement because my project stood for what I had done, all right. Although I did not convert it, but then I was still eligible for the work I had done. So my work spoke for me. And the learnings that I had from those projects or from the failure, from the interviews, I still have it, right? It is helping me throughout. So never consider a failure as a failure, but it's as a learning. So it doesn't matter, really.
Okay. We have just time for one more question. How is the IT consulting job different from management consulting profile offered by the big fours or the MBBs and other management consulting companies?
Okay. So generally, what happens in a pure management function roles is that you're not part of implementation. Okay. So when I talked about a business problem, when the client said that, we have to enter a particular market and we have to look at and build an app. All right. The first part where you say, where do we enter and how do we enter? That's the pure management consulting part of it. Okay. So that is where most of the big fours will exit. And they'll say that this is what we do. These are the markets based on, market entry surveys or probably different, frameworks that they apply. That is where they'll stop. And then the IT consulting part of it starts where you say, this is how we develop the app. This is how we implement the app. This is how we partner with different vendors. This is how we network with them. We integrate with them. That is the IT consulting part of it. Okay. So these are the functions that the generally management function will only revolve around market entry and the non-implementation part of it. As part of IT, you get into implementation a bit.
Okay. Oh, there's just one more question from the same person regarding the startup. What sort of questions I might be asked by the B schools or by the firms who have a startup failure on their resume? And
so
why are they pursuing an MBA despite it? Yeah.
Okay. So that's like answering why MBA for this particular person. So yeah. Honestly, first of all, they'll be very, very interested in what the startup is. Okay. What it was, how it evolved, and then how it failed. Okay. And the most important question that will come his way is the learnings out of it. How did you take it? What do you have what are the learnings? Okay. He will have to quantify all those learnings. Because he's seen it growing and then declining. All right. So they will definitely want to know how he or she will not commit the same mistakes again. Okay. So that is a question that they will definitely ask. To answer the question, can you hear me?
Yeah. Now I can. Yeah.
Kalyani, can you hear me?
Yeah. No, we could not hear you.
Okay. And to the okay. So the second part where you say that why an MBA, so there are tens and thousands of different justifications to it, right? Because you have the understanding of how a startup work, how exhausting it is, how involving it is. You now want to work for an organization and not particularly go for an entrepreneurship route because you've already burnt hands at it. Okay, so you know it's something which you will want to pursue after getting more experience after working with organized company. So that is something how you can justify like that.
There's one more question. This is a good
But
question.
yeah.
I work at Oracle as an associate consultant, which is
Mhm.
much more of a technical job. Will it be helpful while getting a job in business consultancy?
Obviously, why not? I mean, see, any business consulting firm, all right, they will look for a good experience that you have in the past. Okay. So, and if you're technically very, very sound, so working with Oracle, if you have the technical expertise as well, you will definitely have, some edge over the others because be it IT and strategy or be it business, as long as you have done work, with a good organization, people expect you to have done problem solving. They expect you to have impact on the bottom line on actual problems, all right. So that is what the companies will respect. Okay, so irrespective if it's a technical role, if you have had impact in certain way to the clients, they will cherish it, and you just have to justify what you have done. So no worries about it.
All right. Thank you so much. Before we wrap up, I would like to thank all of your attendees. Thank you so much for taking your time today and coming for Future You. And thank you so much. Special thanks to Prateek Tak. Thank you for all the insights
No
and
worries.
thank you for taking our time. So this is Kalyani Majumdar from IMS.
My pleasure.
Wishing you a great
Thank you so much for having me.
yeah, stay home and stay safe. Good day. We'll be coming back with more episodes for all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye.